Hi, I'm Alex. If you're new here, welcome. If not, welcome back. Today we are going to be filming the end of year reading tag. I think Destiny Sidwell started this, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. Basically, we're just going to be answering a bunch of questions about the books that I read in 2023. To preface this video, I've read 160 books so far this year. Today is December 27th, so I could get through more. We'll see. But as of right now, that's where we're at, is 160. So let's get into this. Starting with the most disappointing read this year, and for me, it was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I was so excited to read this book. I literally could not wait. It had been sitting on my shelf for so long, and I filmed a Dark Academia reading vlog just to read this, and I really hated it. I think I rated it 2 stars, if not 2.5. I did not like the way it was written. I know people love Donna Tartt, but I didn't like that it was written as like a past tense, like it sounded like telling your friend a story and getting like mumbled and jumbled, and I didn't love it. I don't like when people tell me stories that don't make sense like this, so I didn't like reading it. And if you don't know what The Secret History is about, I could tell you. I was going to say I couldn't tell you. I could tell you, but honestly, going into this book blind, I think is the only way to do it. Just know that it's Dark Academia, and there are some messed up things that happen in it. So if you want more in-depth thoughts on this, it is in my Dark Academia reading vlog, and I even threw in some spoilers about it. So the next question is, what was your underdog read of the year? So I googled the definition of underdog to do this, and I'll put it right here, but basically a book that you were not expecting to like, but then you ended up loving. And for me, it was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't own a copy of it. I keep meaning to buy it, but just haven't picked it up yet. But this book was crazy. Not crazy in that like the plot is crazy, but it was crazy to me how much I enjoyed it, given that it's about tennis. I would say it's more like women's fiction. It's not really like romance, which is what my like romance and fantasy are my like typical genres. So for me, it was wild that I loved this book so much. I rated it 4.5 stars. It's one of my highest rated Taylor Jenkins Reid books. And I really enjoyed it. The next question is, what is an overhyped book that you read this year? And I posted about this on my book Instagram, on my TikTok, whatever, but it's Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I understand why people like this book, but it just felt like a copy-paste of like The Summer I Turned Pretty mixed with like Love and Other Words. Like down to one of the things was like he was obsessed with her freckles, and the sentence was written in the same exact way that Jenny Han wrote it in The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I just like, can you do something original? Like why? I don't know. I rated this book 2.5 stars. I understand why people like it. If you haven't read the other ones, if this was the first I was reading out of those 3 books, I would have really enjoyed it too, but given that I had just done a reread of the entire Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy and am a huge fan of Love and Other Words, this book was like kind of a waste of my time. I own Meet Me at the Lake, and I'm excited to read it because I know people don't love the like plot line, but at least it's original. Like it doesn't sound like it's something that's going to be copy and paste of other books, so I am way more interested in that one than I was in Every Summer After. Next question was, who was your favorite book couple of the year? And I think it's going to go to Nate and Anastasia in Icebreaker. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and also I'm trying to not like repeat any, so there are obviously other couples in other books that I loved that the books are talked about on this, but Icebreaker was not on my list yet, so we went with Nate and Anastasia. They made me giggle. They made me kick my feet. I loved them. I was staying up until like 3 a.m. reading, and like just wanted to finish this book so badly. So Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I need to read Wildfire. It's sitting on my TBR shelf. I'm hoping to get through it by the end of the year, but as of right now, I have not picked it up yet. The next question is, who is your favorite main character of the year? And for me, it's going to Alex from Red, White, and Royal Blue. I relate to Alex, because my name is also Alex, but the political science and data aspect of his life, if you don't know, I have my BA in poli-sci. I'm super interested in, I used to be super interested in politics. I've sort of veered off of that into education policy at this point, but I related to Alex so much in that nature that it was really fun reading a book about that, but a character who was fairly similar to me. And I love his love story with Henry. I thought it was very cute. I loved the movie. This almost got my favorite TV book adaptation of the year. Almost, because I really did enjoy it. I rated it 4.5 stars. The only reason I took off a half star is because there were some parts that were a little bit slow. The next question is the book that you were most surprised by this year, and for me, that was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So I was working at a college for the first 9 months of the year, and I was walking through their library one day and saw this sitting on a shelf being displayed, and I read the back and I was like, magic at Yale, that sounds really interesting, dark academia, fantasy at something in my state that I can relate to. I've been to the campus, I know what it's like, whatever. So I was excited to pick up Ninth House. I was not expecting to love and adore it as much as I do. And I think I've heard some pretty mixed reviews on this book, but I was obsessed. I picked up Hellbent immediately, was obsessed with that one too. I cannot wait for a book 3 to eventually come out. Has Leigh Bardugo even slightly mentioned it? No. Have each of these books taken 3 years of research? Yes. Am I going to buy it on its release date and read it immediately? Yes. So I loved Ninth House. Again, this was not everybody's cup of tea, but it certainly was mine. The next question was an author that you read for the first time this year and really loved. For me, that was Abby Jimenez. The only 2 of her books that I have sitting on my shelf are Part of Your World and Yours Truly, both of which I rated 5 stars. I loved them so much. I have read 3 of her other books as well, but just on my Kindle, so I don't have them. But I love Abby Jimenez. I love her writing. I love her characters. They're all developed so well. And they're so, different, even though they have, sort of the same vibe. And I just really enjoy that. I cannot wait for her new book to come out next year. If you watched my 24 books to read in 2024 video, you know that is one of the books I'm most excited for. So she has become an auto-buy author for me, and if you haven't picked up one of her books, pick up one of her books. That's, if you get nothing else out of this video, it's to pick up an Abby Jimenez book. The next question is a book that made you the happiest this year. So I have 2 for this. One of them is kind of random, and it's Big Nick Energy. I want to say it's Morgan Elizabeth. Yeah, it is by Morgan Elizabeth. I was right. I loved this book. I loved that she always writes fairly spicy books, but they always have a cute plot. And in this one, the guy comes to her house an hour away to move her kid's Elf on the Shelf every night, so it's one less thing that she has to do. And I just find that so adorable. It was one of my favorite Christmas books I've ever read. I rated it pretty high for being a holiday read, so I really enjoyed that. And then equally, Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I think this is my favorite book by her. I really enjoyed The Love Hypothesis too, but I do think this one takes the cake. It had me, I know I said giggling and kicking my feet with Icebreaker, but that was the same way with this. This is definitely her funniest to read. If you are looking for something that makes you laugh, Love Theoretically is so good, and it just made me so happy. There were obviously moments that were a little sad, especially as a woman in science, but I did love the book a lot. Alright, on the other end of that, there's most frustrating book of the year. And I have two for this, and they are frustrating for two different reasons. So the first is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. And I really enjoyed this book, okay? But it was frustrating in the sense that the end ties into the end of The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and it just left me so dumbfounded and confused as to how those two things tie together. And I still think about it probably once a week. I read this in September. I still think about this because it is so frustrating to me that I can't figure it out. Okay, so beautiful book, beautiful writing, loved it a lot. But it is so frustrating to me that I cannot understand. So that is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. And then on the other side of that, I have The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This book was frustrating to me because if you've read it, you know, it's sort of like an unreliable narrator situation. And I'm not going to say what makes it frustrating because that, like, spoils the book. But you think this guy is, like, cheating on everybody. And that's never fun to read about. I rated The No-Show, like, 2.5 stars, I think. And The Maidens, I think I rated 4 stars. Moving on, my favorite TV or movie adaptation of the year, like I said, Red, White, and Royal Blue was the runner-up for this, but I thought season 2 of The Summer I Turned Pretty was done so well. I really enjoyed watching it. My husband sat down and watched it with me every week. We rewatched all of season 1. It was great. I can't wait for season 3. I hope that they go back to the plot of the book a little bit. But I really enjoyed that they brought in some other elements that sort of got missed in the first season that were in the first book. Yeah, I think it's perfectly casted. The cast is honestly one of the best ever. I loved it. So that was my favorite TV movie adaptation of the year. Moving on to the longest book of the year, it was The Court of Silver Flames. This thing is thick. I don't even know how many pages it is. Like 800? 751. So this is what my book tracking app, I use Storygraph. This is what Storygraph told me was my longest read of the year. I am currently doing the tandem read of Throne of Glass, and those books are pretty long too, but I don't think they're as long as A Court of Silver Flames. Moving on to the shortest books I read this year. They're novellas, so I don't know if this is what I was meant to do for this question, but the 3 novellas in Loathe to Love You were the shortest reads I had this year. They're each 112 pages. I read them one at a time and then put it down and then picked it back up and read another one later. So those were my shortest. If these don't count, it was The Sinful Lives of Trophy Wives by Kristen Miller, which I really did not enjoy, but that was a fairly short book as well. Next is your favorite covers of the year, and I could not just pick one of these. They are the Fourth Wing Special Edition and Iron Flame. I have, obviously, the special editions of both. I loved these. I love the books in general, but I think the covers are so pretty. I'm so happy to have them sitting on my shelf and displayed for the world to see. The next question is a book that you're still thinking about, and for this I'm going to have to go with a full series, and that is the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. I loved this series. If anybody's looking for book recommendations, that's always the number one thing I go to. I think it is incredible. I don't know how I didn't pick it up until now. It was just so good to me that I read it. Along with picking up an Abby Jimenez book, read the series. I cannot express that enough. The next question is the cringiest book you've read this year, and I think it's going to have to be The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I did like this book. I read it on my Kindle. I did like this book, but the Groundhog Day thing is always just a little bit cringy. No matter who the author is, what the storyline is, it doesn't matter. It's always a little cringy. So definitely The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. This is a a book about a high schooler who wants like the perfect Valentine's Day, and every day she wakes up and it's Valentine's Day and she has another chance at it, but it's a mess. So the next one is an unpopular book that you really loved this year, and this is a book that I got recommended in a sponsored post on Facebook. That is A Hunt So Wicked. I adored this book. I know book 1 just came out, so book 2 probably will not be out for a while, but it was like the Selection meets the Hunger Games, sort of. I think they describe it as like Game of Thrones meets Hunger Games, but I loved it. It was so good. But it's about like a bunch of royals need someone to marry, so they bring women in from the kingdom, and they're essentially competing for a chance to marry one of these people. But it's a little dark, and there's a twist to it. Definitely an adult book, I would say. I don't know if it's advertised as being YA, but it's a little gruesome, so take that as you will. The next question on here is the highest and lowest rated books on Goodreads, and if you agree, and I'm going to be so honest, I don't use Goodreads, so I'm not doing this question because I wasn't putting all these books into Goodreads just to answer this question. The next one on here is your favorite quotes of the year, and I actually did not annotate any books this year. I think I maybe underlined some things in A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, but I think that's literally the only book that I did any sort of like annotating in. So I don't have any quotes to share with you right now, but there are definitely some books that I read this year that I want to reread next year and do annotating for. Next is a book with a unique concept you read this year, and for me, that's Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I loved this book. It's a dark rom-com. It's a dark rom-com book, so it's a romantic comedy, but it's also a dark romance. I would say it's like, I don't know, it's a book about 2 serial killers who like compete to get the kill first. One of the trigger warnings is that it has accidental cannibalism, which is just like, how does that even happen? But it's genuinely so funny, and I've recommended it to so many people since reading it. It got me out of a pretty bad reading slump, so I am very thankful for that. The last specific question about books I read this year is what would you want to reread? And honestly, the entire ACOTAR series and then the Empyrean series. So those 2 I definitely want to reread at some point. Like I said, I do want to go through and annotate them, so I probably will do that. We'll see if I have time to do it next year or not, but I definitely would reread those. So the next question is a 2023 reflection and your 2024 reading goal. So in 2023, I wanted to read 104 books. That was my original goal, so I definitely surpassed that a lot. I learned how much audiobooks can help with that, and I know that there are people who don't qualify that as reading, and I don't really care. If I am spending 8 hours listening to a book while I'm driving, that's more productive than me listening to Taylor Swift, which is what I normally do. So I don't care about that opinion, but I think that this year I read a lot of books for videos that I probably wouldn't have read otherwise. I forced myself to read a lot of things just because they were sitting on my shelf, and I think that next year, and this is the next question about your 2024 reading priorities, I want to read what I want instead of trying to force myself to read for videos, just because I have talked about this in my last 2 videos. I'm currently pregnant, so I'm going to have a lot less time to read once the baby is here, so I definitely don't want to waste that time reading books that I'm not enjoying. I tend to not DNF books. The only book I DNF'd this entire year was The Spare by Prince Harry. So I think that I'm going to do more of that when I'm not enjoying books, and not to try to power through for the sake of having another book completed on my list. And then in terms of my 2024 reading goal, I would like to read 52 books. I'm aiming for one a week. We'll see if that's realistic or not. Right now, I would say I read like one every 3 days. Sometimes more than that, sometimes less than that, but I would say that that's the average. So I would like to read one a week for the next year. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you tomorrow with the book shopping vlog.